So, picture this. It's March of 2026, right? And someone pulls a completely normal, disposable coffee cup out of the trash.
Just a totally average compostable cup.
Exactly. But then they take a permanent marker and they write this insane, highly specific string of military-grade tracking syntax right across the cardboard sleeve.
Right.
And then they log its exact GPS coordinates into this massive database.
Yeah, and then immediately just throw it right back into the garbage.
Right. And that exact action, that seemingly absurd little ritual with literal trash, well, the sources we have today suggest it might be the most profound cure for, the disposable nature of modern trauma that we've ever really seen.
It completely forces you to reevaluate what you consider worth saving. I mean, we're so trained to think of history as this grand thing that happens to nations, right?
Yeah, like stuff in textbooks or behind glass in a museum.
Exactly. Perfectly lit in a museum. We're not taught to look at, the transit residue of our own Tuesday afternoons and see an actual archival landscape.
Transit residue. I love that phrase. And honestly, when you sent over the massive stack of sources for today's deep dive, I didn't know what to make of it at first.
It's a lot. It's incredibly dense.
It really is. I mean, you handed me website excerpts, project manifestos, these super dense digital logs, and esoteric tag structures.
Yeah.
All from this creator named Riordan.
Operating under the handle at @Lu_da_Fizz.
Right, at @LuDaFizz. And I was just digging through your notes trying to find the bottom of this rabbit hole, and it is deep.
Because the material doesn't read like a conventional art portfolio. And it definitely doesn't read like a standard diary either.
No, not at all.
It functions way more like the raw, unfiltered telemetry data of a human mind, just, attempting to map its own existence in real time.
Yeah, and the sources introduce this whole ecosystem. They call it FizzStory EXP, with 3 very specific words, which are messy, bold, human.
Messy being the operative word there.
Truly. It described itself as a living archive of stories, artifacts, memories, and experiments collected in messy motion. So for you listening right now, whether you're just insanely curious about the bleeding edge of digital archiving, or maybe you're just looking for a new perspective on the everyday trash and treasures in your own life, we are going to untangle this together.
Because by the time we finish, the way you look at your own physical footprint is going to permanently change.
Oh, absolutely. So where do we even start with this?
Well, to understand the mechanics, we have to look at the diagnostic conditions that actually necessitated it. The record notes in the sources point to a very specific period of chaos.
Right, the origin story.
Exactly. The genesis of FizzStory EXP really traces back to 2017 and 2018. The texts describe it as an era of intense social unrest paired with profound personal upheaval.
And this is happening across 2 primary locations, right? The tags say PHX for Phoenix and NYC for New York City.
Yes, Phoenix and New York. The notes talk about fragments of that period still, quote, bubbling through the artifacts. It paints this picture of someone standing right in the middle of a storm.
And their response to that overwhelming storm wasn't to, hide from it. It was to start categorizing the rain.
That's a great way to put it.
The source actually says they began documenting and tagging everyday things to navigate the uncharted terrain of breakthroughs and breakdowns. But I guess my question is, how does putting a tag on something actually help you survive a breakdown?
Well, think about the human brain. When it's subjected to severe, prolonged stress or trauma, it struggles with executive function. Narrative continuity just breaks down.
Like time gets slippery.
Exactly. The world becomes unmanageable.
Yeah.
So the neurological response to that kind of chaos is often this desperate search for control.
So by grabbing these completely mundane details of daily life and forcing them into this rigid tagging system, Lou was creating a neurological anchor.
Yes. They took what they call the mess of identity and belonging and just forced structure onto it.
And the text calls this recovery design in motion, which to me is a fascinating collision of terms. Because usually, design thinking is this corporate buzzword.
Right, it's what tech companies use.
Yeah, it's how they figure out how to make you click a button faster on a food delivery app.
But Lou Riordan took those exact principles, empathy, definition, ideation, prototyping, testing, and turned them completely inward.
Wow.
Instead of designing a product, they were designing the conditions for personal recovery, and they formalized this instinct too. The sources show they actually undertook a postgraduate diploma in innovation through design thinking at University College Cork in Ireland.
Oh, wow. So they took this raw survival mechanism from the streets of Phoenix and New York and actually brought it into an academic framework at UCC.
Right. The academic structure provided a container for the bubbling that was already happening. It gave a rigorous vocabulary to this sheer instinct to document.
And you can really see that rigor in how they divide their own life timeline. It's broken into these distinct, almost geological epochs in the logs.
It is.
Like, it starts with an era labeled Born, covering 2016 to 2017. Then we get Comeback from 2019 to 2020. But then, and this is the part that stood out to me, there's this massive dark gap.
Yes.
The era from 2021 to 2024 is literally logged as bottom/dropout.
That inclusion is probably the most critical piece of this timeline.
Why do you say that?
Because recovery narratives in popular culture, they usually demand a clean upward trajectory.
Right.
You hit rock bottom, you have an epiphany, and then you just get better.
Like a movie montage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But by categorizing a 3-year span as a sustained dropout, Liu acknowledges that falling out of the systems of normal societal function is just part of the architecture of the self.
And the tagging didn't stop during those 3 years either.
No, the system held the human when the human couldn't hold themselves.
Okay, but looking at these logs, I have to ask the obvious question. If you're going through a multi-year dropout phase, and your response is to obsessively collect and catalog everyday objects, I mean, is this not just glorified hoarding?
It's a fair question.
Like, are you just gathering trash to avoid dealing with the reality of the collapse?
The project actually addresses this friction directly. The pathology of hoarding is rooted in an inability to process letting go. It's driven by fear.
So it results in this dense, unnavigable mass of stuff.
Right. The objects end up owning the person. But FizzStory EXP operates on the exact opposite mechanism. It is hyper-navigable.
Because of the metadata.
Exactly. Applying metadata to these objects isn't about mindless accumulation. It's about acute mindfulness.
So if I'm lost in the woods, hoarding would be me frantically stuffing every rock and twig into my pockets until I can't move.
Right. Whereas under the framework of recovery design, you aren't stuffing the twigs in your pocket. You are carving a date and a time into the trunk of a tree and walking past it.
Leaving breadcrumbs. Not necessarily to find a way out of the forest, because maybe the forest is just where you live now, but you're marking the tree to prove to yourself that you actually existed in that exact spot at that exact second.
It's the documentation of presence. And to truly understand how that documentation functions, we need to look at the physical breadcrumbs themselves. This is the physical pillar of the project.
Yeah, the sources categorize this physical pillar under the tag play. And the overarching label for the physical artifacts is RATART, spelled R-A-T-A-R-T.
And before we even look at the items, we have to talk about how intensely this world is divided.
Oh, yeah. In this ecosystem, every physical object is forced into one of two categories, right? Tings and shits.
The nomenclature is jarring on purpose. It breaks down the reverence we usually reserve for art.
Definitely. So tings are the held artifacts. The manifesto defines them as the things we buy, get, hold, keep, and love. So they have real weight and permanence.
And then shits are the transient objects. The passing surfaces, disposable packaging, the stuff moving through our hands on its way to somewhere else. Liu calls them transit residue.
Transit residue. I just can't get over that term. But it's not enough to just say, oh, this is a ting or this is a shit. To become part of RATART, the object has to go through a tagging structure that is, frankly, staggering.
The source material includes the RATART tag structure rules, and it demands absolute temporal and spatial precision. The syntax is totally unforgiving.
Right. Every single item has to be chronicled using this exact string. First, the designation, hashtag tagyoushit or hashtag tagyouing.
Then the creator's mark, EDIO mark.
Then the emotion or category, hashtag sayWA.
And then comes the crucial metadata, the exact date in year, month, day format, the exact time at HHMM. And finally, the spatial coordinates with hashtag GEO.
It's wild. Let's look at how this military-grade metadata actually gets applied, because the scale of these objects swings so wildly. Like, the largest artifact in the source material is the rat nest art trap.
Right, which is logged as a RATART kneading with shits.
And the scale of this thing is massive. We're talking about a 1970s Galaxy mobile home. It's 35 feet by 12 feet, located in Ireland.
It's described as a participatory, interactive sculpture covered in mixed media. And its status in the logs is bobiailing, which means it's an active, ongoing site of creation.
Now, applying this crazy level of metadata to a 35-foot mobile home makes sense. It's huge infrastructure. But the radical part is that Lu applies the exact same syntax to the smallest, most disposable items imaginable.
Which brings us back to the coffee cup from the beginning.
Yes, the snaky cup, logged as a RATART shit. The medium is literally just a compostable coffee cup and a permanent marker, but the lore attached to it in the database reads, sneaky treat, bought and drunk when coffers were bare.
When coffers were bare. So you can clearly see the financial stress happening.
And the timestamps are incredible. Tagged on March 11th, 2026. Got at 18.20, tagged at 18.33, trashed at 18.40.
Just think about the philosophical weight of that action for a second. Society produces millions of these cups every day. Their whole design purpose is to be invisible, serve a function for 20 minutes, and vanish into a landfill.
Right, they aren't meant to have a history.
But by intercepting that cup, logging the precise minute it was acquired, the minute the ink hit it, and the minute it was trashed, the creator is demanding that we acknowledge the object's existence. The sources refer to this as recognizing the woo of stuff.
The woo of stuff, the inherent energy or like the invisible story vibrating inside a piece of trash. It feels almost like, you know, the Marie Kondo method?
Where you pick up an object to see if it sparks joy.
Yeah, you see if it sparks joy, thank it, and toss it in a donation bin so your closet looks nice.
Right, but Marie Kondo focuses on the emotional utility of the object to the owner in the present moment. If it lacks utility, you discard it to maintain a pristine environment.
Exactly. So this is like a reverse Marie Kondo. FizzStory EXP doesn't care if the coffee cup sparks joy. It cares that the coffee cup was a witness to your survival when your, quote, coffers were bare. It demands that you hold the trash, recognize its profound temporal reality, force it into the historical record with GPS coordinates, and only then are you permitted to let it go. You're revering the trash because it proves you were alive on March 11th at 18.33.
And that reverence for the objects that witness our survival is nowhere more apparent than in the artifact logged as the buckbayoots.
Oh, the buckbayoots, logged as a RATART ting. The description says field-worn artifact. We're talking about 2 pairs of Timberland PRO buckskin boots. And the lore shows they were acquired for an Amazon job back in 2021.
And 2021 is highly significant. If we cross-reference the timeline, 2021 is the very beginning of the bottom/dropout era.
Wow, okay, so these boots were acquired right as the creator was entering a 3-year period of systemic collapse.
Exactly. And the tags trace this unbelievable geographical journey. Worn on a home-to-homeless to homeland tour.
Moving from PHX, Phoenix, to NYC, New York City, and eventually to LNK, Limerick, in Ireland.
The physical condition of the boots is documented so meticulously. They're covered in layers of oil, acrylic, spray paint. The text says logged, worn, lived, reworn, relived.
They aren't just footwear.
No, they're an external hard drive. They're recording the physical toll of labor, displacement, and eventually the migration to a new homeland. The trauma is visibly baked into the leather.
But this brings me back to the logistical reality of actually doing this. If you are logging every piece of transit residue and keeping heavy artifacts like the buckbayoots, where does it end? Does Lu just live in a 35-foot mobile home surrounded by thousands of tagged coffee cups and spray-painted boots?
Well, at some point, the archive would become a prison, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why the concept of recovery design has a mechanism for release. Under the work pillar of the project, Lu built something called the RATART auction art space.
Okay, so a formal transfer protocol.
Yes. The stated purpose of this space is dedicated to provenance, letting go, drift, transfership, recovery, care.
Transfership, I like that. So there's an actual system designed to help you let go of the breadcrumbs once you're safely out of the woods.
Or when the breadcrumb itself just becomes too heavy to carry. It shows this profound understanding that holding on to the evidence of your trauma is really only the first step of recovery.
Right.
True design thinking requires you to prototype a way to offload that weight. Even the 35-foot rat nest art trap has a protocol for this. The site explicitly says, "Wanna have?" Bid at FizzStoryXP.com.
They are willing to transfer the entire mobile home. You hold the artifact while it serves your healing and allow it to drift to someone else when its purpose is fulfilled. That makes so much sense.
It really does.
Okay, so RATART handles the physical footprint. The boots, the cups, the mobile homes, things you can touch. But human life isn't just physical. A huge part of our daily existence involves entirely intangible exchanges, like passing a stranger on the street and feeling a sudden wave of gratitude, or the concept of money and value in a totally digital world. How does a system obsessed with physical tagging Handle something you can't actually hold.
It creates a physical proxy for the intangible emotion. This is detailed in the sources under the pre-tips system.
Ah,
And honestly, it is one of the most sociologically complex mechanics in the entire FizzStory ecosystem.
pre-tips. The notes describe it as pre-tips in motion, subtitled, tag depreciation, money or tips that we hold slash share slash pass forward. So basically, it's an economy built entirely on anticipatory gratitude.
Exactly.
Let's walk through how this actually works, because Luda designed a very specific 6-step loop for this.
The architecture of this loop is vital. Step 1 is the boom or spark. This is the inciting incident. Someone, an artist, a stranger, or even a place, moves you emotionally or intellectually.
But the crucial thing is, you don't tip them in that moment. You move to step 2, which is mark or tag. You take a physical banknote, actual cash, and you write a mark on it.
Right.
And then step 3 is FZ or POP. You just carry it. You hold on to this tagged money.
You just hold it. The text refers to this state as bubbling.
Bubbling.
Then step 4 is tip or deem. This is the moment where the universe aligns and the encounter or the necessity finally arrives. Step 5 is drop or ship. You release the tag note into the physical circulation of the world.
And finally, step 6 is find or loop, where the cycle just continues out there in the world, totally beyond the creator's control.
Exactly. And there's a very explicit critique woven into this 6-step loop. The project notes state that pre-tips is an impartial commentary on the disappearance of physical cash.
Right, because we live in a world where I buy my groceries by just double-clicking the side of my phone.
The friction has been entirely removed from the transaction. When we transition to instantaneous digital transfers, we achieve maximum efficiency, sure. But Lou points out that we lost the small human interactions that once moved through it.
The localized lore. The serendipity of finding a weird marking on a dollar bill.
Yes, exactly.
I see that. When I Venmo someone, the money doesn't really exist. It's just a database updating on a server somewhere. There's no transit residue. But with pre-tips, you are forcing the transit residue back into the economy.
And there's a beautiful example of this in the source logs. Lou prepared a pre-tip designated for an artist named Ren Gill.
Oh, right. The timeline of that specific pre-tip is telling. It was tagged on March 11th, 2025. But it wasn't actually dropped into circulation until July 19th, 2025 in Limerick, Ireland.
They walked around with a physical manifestation of gratitude for Ren Gill in their pocket for 4 entire months.
Which is wild. Hold it. If you're grateful to the guy in March, why not just drop the bill in March?
Because the act of holding the tip changes the psychology of the person carrying it. You are existing in a prolonged state of anticipatory gratitude. You're carrying this talisman that says, I have recognized value in the world, and I am just waiting for the precise moment to honor it.
Wow.
The sources even note that some stay bubbling for years. Some are deemed needed before the moment.
Some disappear into the loop completely, which is where my brain gets stuck on the logistics a little bit.
Yeah.
Say I tag a 20-euro note for this Rengill guy. I carry it for months, and then I decide it's time for step 5, and I drop it into the world in Limerick.
Right.
If the intended recipient Rengill never actually receives the physical note, isn't this just a pointless exercise? I mean, I'm defacing currency, and the guy I'm trying to thank doesn't even know I did it.
Well, the project actually anticipates that exact friction. First off, regarding defacing currency, the sources emphasize a strict ethical framework. It says, respect the peace, respect the people, respect the laws. This suggests that depending on the jurisdiction, the creator uses temporary ink, removable sleeves, or stickers, ensuring the currency remains viable. But your philosophical objection is really the core of the project. If the person never sees it, is it pointless?
Yeah.
Lou Riordan answers this directly in the manifesto. Not every pre-tip needs to be found. Not every story needs proof.
Not every story needs proof. That goes against everything our modern culture teaches us. If you do something nice, you post a video of it online to prove you did it.
Exactly. The modern impulse is to demand a receipt for our virtue. The pre-tip system argues that the value isn't entirely in the destination. The value is generated inside the pocket of the carrier.
So for 4 months, Lou was walking through the world fundamentally altered by the presence of that gratitude.
Yes. And when the note is finally released, it creates an anomaly in the capitalist machine. A stranger in a coffee shop in Limerick might receive that note as change, look at the tag intended for Rengill, and for a fraction of a second, the invisible, messy web of human connection is made physical.
It injects mystery back into the wallet. I really love the analog romance of that. But here's the paradox of FizzStory EXP. We're talking about physical coffee cups, spray-painted work boots, and tagged banknotes drifting through local economies. It feels incredibly analog, grounded in dirt and ink.
Yeah, it does.
But if you look at the infrastructure holding all this together, it is a profoundly complex, hyper-modern digital framework. To manage all this analog fiction, Lou relies on the digital lab.
The lab is the engine room. It governs how the physical and digital artifacts are processed.
Yeah.
And the overarching protocol that runs this engine is called the Fizz system loop. Its directive is absolute. Build, tag, ship, break, loop, hashtag repeat.
It's relentless, but to maintain a loop that intense, I mean, logging every emotion in every coffee cup, a human mind needs help. And the sources detail exactly how Lou gets that help.
Right.
Inside the lab silo, there's a concept referred to as digi/slicex_cogs, which is a very cyberpunk way of saying they're using artificial intelligence.
They explicitly name the platforms being utilized: ChatGPT, Google's NotebookLM, and Gemini. But what is critical here isn't the technology itself, but the aggressive boundaries Lou establishes around its use.
Right, because right now we are living through an explosion of people using AI to just automate their own lives. People use AI to write apologies to their spouses, to generate art, write novels. They are essentially outsourcing the friction of the human experience to a server farm.
Yes, and Lou's manifesto regarding AI is basically a declaration of war against that idea. The phrasing in the LLab documents is unambiguous. The AI agents are defined strictly as silicon lab hands, metacogs in the lab.
Right.
And then the creator uses the universal prohibition symbol, circled with the slash 3 times, to outline what AI is not allowed to be.
Oh, yeah, the no symbols.
Exactly. Quote, no authors, no replacements, no Fortune 500 tellers.
Fortune 500 tellers. That is such a brilliant critique. Tech companies are desperately trying to sell us AI as this omniscient oracle that will optimize our schedules, predict our needs, and write our stories for us. And Lou is looking at the most powerful technology on Earth and saying, you do not get to hold the pen, you are a lab assistant.
It demands that the human stays witness, editor, and meaning maker. The AI is utilized purely as an assistive cognition system. Its job is to process, reflect, map, remix, and archive the ideas that are already in motion. The raw material has to be human.
Okay, let me try to map this out visually. Imagine the human mind, especially during that chaotic 2021 to 2024 dropout T era. The mind is a vast, open hillside.
Okay.
And the thoughts, traumas, grocery lists, profound realizations, and passing jokes, they're all like a massive flock of sheep just scattering in 100 different directions at once in total panic.
And in the modern tech paradigm, a Silicon Valley company would tell you to let the AI build a mechanical sheep that is easier to manage and just pretend that's your flock.
Yes, exactly. But in the Fizz system, the AI is not the shepherd, it doesn't own the farm, and it certainly doesn't invent the sheep. The AI is just the sheepdog.
The Silicon Lab hand.
Right. The sheepdog's only job is to run incredibly fast around the edges of the chaos, barking the massive, messy flock into a coherent pen. It doesn't tell you what the sheep mean. It just gathers the data so the shepherd can finally stand at the fence, look at the chaos, and synthesize it.
That's a perfect analogy. And there's a documented evolution of this realization in the sources. There's a section explaining the shift in nomenclature from FizzStory to Fizz-It-Play.
Oh, I saw that.
It states this represents a pivot from telling stories to designing the conditions to tell them. The AI isn't generating the story. The AI is the sensing that holds the conditions together.
Which brings us to the most vital question of the deep dive, I think. If the AI is the sheepdog and the Fizz system is the pen, what exactly are the sheep?
The raw data.
Right. We've talked about the physical trash and the money and the infrastructure, but we need to look at the actual raw human data being processed. We need to look inside the life silo, specifically a section called Saywa.
Saywa, spelled S-A-Y-W-H-A with an interrobang, is the textual heart of the archive. It's subtitled Sayings of Things Said. And much like the physical objects, these micro-logs of existence are meticulously categorized, but this time by emotion or intent.
The subcategories are fantastic. You have say art, say WRK for work, say IRL for in real life, say 3Y, say FUMN, say SMRT for smart, and say IDK for I don't know.
It covers everything.
It really does. Let's look at what actually gets logged here because it swings from profound literature to literal garbage. Under, say, CRY, there is a quote from Hugh Howey's 2013 novel, Wool.
The logged quote is, "His husband's eyes swam behind tears while he allowed his dutiful sheriff self to intervene. It's tagged with the book's ISBN number and logged on March 26, 2026. A moment of intense, empathetic literary resonance.
Beautiful. But then, right next to it in the database, under, say, FUN, there's a joke pulled from a 2009 children's joke book. Little Bo Peep has lost all her sheep, which is why she's down at the job center this morning. Logged on June 3rd, 2026. Why bother putting a military-grade timestamp on a terrible children's joke?
Because human cognition, both the literary tear and the momentary chuckle, are evidence of a functioning mind. But the most revealing logs are the internal ones. Under, say, IDK, there is a quote from FizzStory themselves from 2019. Viva la moment. It is categorized as a thought to self.
And under, say, SMRT, another thought to self from 2019, I observed myself, therefore I am myself.
By capturing a passing internal monologue like, I observed myself, therefore I am myself, and subjecting it to the same rigorous metadata as the 35-foot mobile home or the Bug Buttes, Lu gives architectural weight to the ephemeral. The passing thought is treated as a highly valuable, catalogable artifact.
There is another section next to this called Story for Nonlinear Scrolly Stories, and there's an entry titled CHZ Dinner. It just reads, protein, warmth, and comfort on toast.
That's it.
That's it. Tagged, logged, shipped into the archive. It's micro-storytelling. It's literally a love letter to a grilled cheese sandwich.
And that is the ultimate rebellion of this project. If you think about the architecture of the modern internet, social media platforms are already doing this to you. They track your GPS coordinates, they log how many milliseconds you linger on a joke.
They record when you type a sad thought and delete it without posting.
Exactly. But they do it passively in the background to extract your behavioral data and sell you targeted ads. They mine your cognitive exhaust for corporate profit.
Right.
What FizzStory EXP is doing is an act of active reclamation. Riordan is building the infrastructure to harvest their own cognitive exhaust. The sources repeatedly refer to this collected data as trademark $/IP, their own intellectual property. They are claiming absolute, rigorous ownership over their own mental state.
They are acting as the archivist of their own ephemeral existence. When the world tries to treat you as disposable, you design a system where nothing about you can be thrown away without a timestamp and a GPS coordinate. It's breathtaking. So let's pull all of this together for you listening. We've covered a massive, sprawling landscape today.
We have examined an ecosystem that defies traditional categorization. Riordan has engineered a reality where a compostable coffee cup and a 35-foot mobile home are both logged as vital survival infrastructure under RATART.
Where the friction of gratitude is weaponized as a physical currency you carry in your pocket under pre-tips.
Where artificial intelligence is stripped of its Silicon Valley godhood and forced to act as a sheepdog for human memories in the lab.
And where recovery from trauma isn't just a therapist's couch, it is an ongoing, relentless design project marked by tags, coordinates, and radical documentation.
The implications for anyone listening are immediate. You don't need a postgraduate diploma from UCC, and you don't need to buy a Galaxy mobile home to apply the principles of recovery design.
Definitely not.
The fundamental lesson is to pay attention to the woo of stuff. It is the conscious acknowledgement of the energy and the transit residue of your life. Giving weight to the passing thoughts on a Tuesday, respecting the miles on your shoes, you have a power to be the active, intentional meaning maker of your own survival.
And that brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with. Think back to that image we talked about at the very beginning, the sterile museum case, with the perfectly lit historical artifact resting safely behind the glass.
Right.
Now look away from this deep dive and look at the physical room around you right now, whether you're in your bedroom, sitting in your car, or at your desk. Look at the crumpled receipt shoved in your cup holder. Look at the scuffed shoes kicked off by the door. Think about the passing joke you forgot an hour ago. If your current space was subjected to the Fizz's system right this very second, if every discarded item and fleeting thought in your immediate vicinity was suddenly tagged, time-stamped, and archived for the historical record, what story would your personal shits and tings tell about the exact person you are right now?